4 months until the World Cup. Let the countdown begin. Welcome to Club and Country Qatar 2022. We are hanging out in the AT&T 5G virtual studios as always. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, Charlie Davies, Matt Doyle, David Goss, doing what we do on this show, which is checking in every single month to get you the headlines, the biggest story, exactly what's going on in U.S. and Canada camp, and maybe take a little gander outside as well. We got special guests today. We're setting expectations with 4 months to go. What does the big dream say? What are the realists saying? And what are the people that just want to set the bare minimum saying about the U.S. and Canada and what should be expected in Qatar? We'll hit all the latest transfers on both sides. Kyle Larin headed to Belgium. Tyler Adams, part of Leeds United, Major League Soccer, Leeds United States, whatever you want to call that at this point. We will dig into the U.S. number 9s once again. Little breakdown from Matt Doyle on Brandon Vazquez and what he could bring if he can get into camp in September with the U.S. We'll also hit the depth charts for both, including Canada's best 11 ahead of the World Cup. We'll talk to Steven Beitashour of the Rapids and of Iran. He was at the World Cup in 2014 with Team Melli, and we'll hit some fan questions at the end. Guys, let's start with the victory lap. And Dave, we've given you the honors. We're talking about what might happen, what could happen, what will happen at the World Cup in Qatar. But the U.S., man, let's take like 8 victory laps. Let's go. Men and women, give it to us.
I'm all about rings culture. That's the only place that I sit. And when you look at CONCACAF rings, in the last 13 months, these are the official CONCACAF competitions that have occurred. The Nations League final, the Gold Cup, the Women's U20 championships, the Women's U17 championships, the Men's U20 championships, with obviously doubled as Olympic qualifying, and then the Women's CONCACAF championship, which just closed up, that the U.S. women's national team defeated Canada in the final. The U.S. won every single one of those tournaments at every age level on both sides, men's and women's. That is the clean sweep, undefeated. Say it to me. CONCACAF Kings, let's go.
That's 6. Wow. Well, I mean, look, Canada's going to argue here, and I'll understand it because they
Canada's about sword. They're about sword
finished
culture.
atop the octagonal.
Sword culture. That's what that is, Weeby. They had the sword of Canada. They collected for that.
TBD whether they can bring the sword to Qatar, so maybe rings will matter more. If they're going for 7, let's talk expectations. And I want to read a quote here from Christian Pulisic in an interview with Herculez Gomez in Football Americas, which you should go check out on ESPN+. They also talked to Greg Berhalter. We'll chat about that a little bit later here. Quote, I think we're going there with the intention to go win the World Cup. There is no reason why any team should go there without that confidence, and that's exactly how we're going to go into this big event. And that reminded me of a quote from a similarly brash young talent, one Landon Donovan ahead of 2002. Quote, we want to win it, Landon said at that time. You come here with any other idea, you should not be here. That is your goal. It's your dream to win the World Cup. And, of course, this is in direct contrast with noted dream killer, Landon's and others, Jurgen Klinsmann. Ahead of 2014, you may remember this. It was a huge, huge story. He put this out, I believe, in January. Quote, we cannot win this World Cup because we are not at that level yet. For us, we have to play the game of our lives 7 times to win the tournament. All right, let's set some expectations. And I'm gonna break it up into 3 different categories. I'm going to say there's a dream big category. Like, let's go for it, man. Landon, Christian, we're on board with you. Let's win this thing. Don't play around talking about anything else. We'll go with the realists. What do the realists say? Like, hey, this could actually happen. And then the bare minimum. Like, if you go below this, you failed. We'll start with the U.S. And I'm going to give you, Charlie, dream big because you've been in this position before. You've been coming into a big tournament thinking, can we win this? Should we say it out loud? Do you like what Christian said? And what is the dream big scenario for the U.S.? Is it winning the whole thing?
Yes, I like what Christian said, and I agree because you want your best player in the group, the most technically gifted player, to say, yes, we can win it, because that's the push, that's the motivation, that's the confidence and self-belief you want from your best player to carry your team. And I look at what Landon Donovan did in 2002. Yeah, he was a young, immature player, but at the end of the day, he helped this U.S. group get past the round of 16, get out of their group, get past the round of 16 against Mexico. And if VAR existed back then, they would have been in a World Cup semifinal. So yes, I'm in 100% agreement with your players thinking that we should win. Because ultimately, if they have the technical ability, they have the athletic ability, And if things go to plan tactically and technically and they execute, they can get to a final and they can win. So for me, I love that. And I always look back to our 2009 Confederations Cup run. Who expected us to get out of a group with Italy, Brazil, and Egypt? People thought we'd be lucky to get a draw against the African champions that was Egypt. And we made it to a final. We beat Spain in the semifinals, who eventually won the World Cup the following year. So I think that gave us internally the self-belief that we can win a World Cup. We have the ability to win a World Cup. We have the quality, and if we execute, we can beat anybody on any given day. So I love that coming from Christian Pulisic.
Gotta believe. You got to believe. You know it might not happen, but if you don't believe it, it's definitely not going to happen. But there are realists out there, Dave. There are those who will say, no, tamp down those expectations. Be real. Don't be saying this stuff publicly. Don't say, yeah, we're going there with the intent to win. Be a little bit more measured. What would the realists say about the U.S. in your opinion?
I think the realists are still pretty positive about this group. I think you start by looking at the group the U.S. starts in, and you say, Iran has let their manager go. You look at a Wales team that has no experience at this level in this competition, and an England team that, let's be real, will eat themselves at some point, whether it's before we get to the tournament or once we're in the tournament.
Oh, man.
And then they are going home. They are going home.
Exactly.
Right?
And so you say for the U.S., group stage minimum. And so once you get past that, you look at the way this draw has set up, and let's say the U.S. doesn't win their group or does. They'll play either the first place team or the second place team in Group A, which is Netherlands, Senegal, Qatar, and Ecuador. They're all good teams. They're all solid teams. They're all tough teams to play. But they're winnable games at the World Cup level. You're always going to play a great team. So I think quarterfinals is a realistic option for the U.S. It's a belief. The realists in me is telling you that. And they would play Argentina if you thought all the favorites held through all the way to that point. If they got second in their group, which I don't hate as a matchup. So I think being competitive in every game, right, looking like they belong on the field no matter if they win or lose or tie in all those games is a huge part of it. But quarterfinals is the realistic view for the U.S. men's national team.
And I got to jump in now, guys. If realistically you're saying quarterfinals is real, quarterfinals, then what is to say they can't win a quarterfinal game and a semifinal game and a final? That's 3 more matches. If you can get to a quarterfinals, you can get to a finals. Let's go.
Boy, the realists are dreaming around these parts. You got to love it. We're 4 months out, and that's where we should be right now. By the way, speaking of Iran, Steven Beitashour will school us here in a little bit. The manager is back. They brought him back. There's all sorts of things happening with Team Melly. How about the bare minimum, Doyle? Maybe bring us back down to earth, maybe, possibly?
Yeah. So I live in a post-results world. I'm more of a process guy, and I think that we all know that part of the impetus behind building the team the way he did for Greg Berhalter was to have an eye on 2026. So the bare minimum is show me something with how you play. Every single game that suggests you're going to be able to play the type of soccer in 2026 that you talked about when you were hired in 2018. I'm talking about disorganizing opponents with the ball, disorganizing opponents without the ball, make that false 9 work, get the wingers involved in the attack, show that you can build from the back, show that you can be a dominant possession team. Because we heard a lot of excuses throughout qualifying. Oh, it's tough to play in the heat of, or the heat and humidity of CONCACAF. Oh, it's tough to play on the cold pitch in Hamilton. Oh, altitude, everything under the sun. And I get it. And I think a lot of that actually rings true. I think in theory, the way that Berhalter wants this team to play works better on the groomed, manicured fields of the World Cup proper than it does in CONCACAF. So the bare minimum is to prove that correct. Go out there and play. If you go out in the group stage, obviously I will be disappointed. But if you really, really ball, if you play beautiful soccer, confident soccer, and you just get a couple bad breaks, I can live with that. I just want to see that this project is worth something.
All right, Sam Hinkie with some good points there. Trust the process. Good stuff from Sam. By the way, if you look down the line, maybe 2026 is the 76ers coming good. You just got to get a generational talent. Anyway, let's talk Canada. Expectations for Canada. They're not out right now talking about, hey, we want to try to win. We're there to win it. We're there to do this, that, and the other. They were saying we're going to make it, then they accomplished that. They're also, as we know, still embroiled in a little bit of drama with the Federation. But let's talk expectations for Canada. We'll come back to you, Doyle, on this one. You did bare minimum, but I want you to dream big now for Canada. What's the big dream?
Quarterfinals. I think it's legit for them to, I don't want to say expect to get out of the group, but it's not the wildest dream in the world to imagine this team getting out of the group. But winning a knockout round, getting into that final 8, I mean, that is a big, big dream for Canada. If I had told you that 2 years ago, you would. If I had told you that a year ago when they were losing in the Gold Cup,
if you told me that right now.
Okay, so fair enough. So you're gonna dump all over Canada. You didn't even know Montreal was an island. You're a fake Canadian, David Gass. No, honestly, the big dream for Canada is to replicate what the U.S. did in 2002. What Charlie was talking about with that confidence, that ability to go out and play hard and take teams off guard, and they have young players who are absolutely fearless. They have proven veterans now. I think they can do that. I think that is absolutely the big dream, and it's an achievable dream for this Canadian side.
All right, Dave, you're the realist once again. We've stuck you right in the middle of the sandwich. What's what's real? What's really real for John Herdman in Canada?
Getting out of the group stage, and it's one step behind what Doyle said, but it's going to be an odd group. I think there's a chance Canada gets out without actually winning a game because of how even a lot of the competition is across this group and how these teams are going to challenge each other. And so it's going to be about managing goal differentials and big moments. And I think for this Canada team, there should be belief because they won World Cup qualifying, because they were the best team in CONCACAF, because everything that's been put in front of them, they've accomplished over the last 2 years. And so there should be belief in the group that they can do that. And I think there's an understanding, and what's nice is sort of a settled group that can say, this is what my role will be, and this is how I achieve it to help this team go forward. And imagine how it ignites everyone in Canada. One-off World Cup qualifiers are great, but now you've got build-up, a World Cup, everything in it. You're going into hosting one. The women have now qualified for 2023. Imagine what two and a half weeks of them being involved in the World Cup themselves will look like.
Belgium to start, of course, Croatia after that, and then Morocco. If you can go in with a point to that Morocco match thinking maybe 4, see what happens, maybe get through the group. But things don't always go to plan, Charlie, and it's been decades now since Canada's been in this position. So what's the bare minimum? What's the line that delineates success or good enough and failure?
They're in the group of death in this year's version of the World Cup. They're in the group of death. If they finished third and did not advance but played beautifully, people would be happy, because this group came out of nowhere and took over CONCACAF. They were amazing to watch. I was one of those people who when I watched Canada, I was inspired because of that level of intensity and belief, and you could feel that teamwork. They're playing for their country. They're playing like they were a tight unit. So I love this Canada team. So if they finished third and they played well, I would say, hands up, you did a great job. That's the group of death, and I think you really made an impression. But with that being said, even if it's a bad day, I still think this group is so good that they will get out. I think they will get out as a second seed in this group. I can't say enough about this group. With Alphonso Davies, Tajon Buchanan, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, and even Steven Beitashour, who's been fantastic for Canada, maybe not so great with his form at Porto, but maybe this year he finally gets into a groove and plays consistently with Porto. They have been so good. And then defensively, they've worked together as a unit. Every single player puts in the time, puts in the effort on both sides of the ball. So that's why I think John Herdman has really galvanized this group, because they're not just focused on one phase of the game. They can attack, they can defend, they can counter, they can hurt you in so many different ways, set pieces. So I'm a big fan of this group, and I think that they get the job done. They get out of the group.
Take a big gulp, folks. It's 4 months out. The optimism Kool-Aid. We are all drinking it. We all want it. Canada to the quarterfinals. U.S., why wouldn't they say that they can win? We will see what actually happens, but let us know what you think in the comments. Dream big. Expectations for both teams. What about the realists? What say you, and what's the bare minimum? What's the line between success and failure. In the meantime, transfers and form at club level will help decide a lot. Let's dig into that. One of the wrinkles with the World Cup starting in November is, of course, an open transfer market in the summer to help set things up, and U.S. and Canadian players are not immune to that. There are moves flying around. Let's start this segment with the Canadian club situations that have changed since we last spoke with you. One, Kyle Larin headed to Belgium. Club Bruges joining up with Tajon Buchanan, trying to get some Champions League minutes there, see if he can kick on his career in a different country. Mark-Anthony Kaye traded within Major League Soccer, a big blockbuster deal between the Colorado Rapids and Toronto FC. Mark-Anthony Kaye returning to where he started his professional career. Steven Beitashour, he has found a club, no unattached FC for him, headed into a World Cup, staying in Portugal, and Steven Eustáquio is going to start his first full season with Porto. He is a full-time Porto player. The big question I have for you guys, which Canadian men's national team player is going to benefit most from their summer move? Charlie, I'll start with you. Who do you think benefits the most?
Kyle Larin. He's making the move to Bruges. And for me, this is a striker who needs to play, who needs to be informed, who needs to be fit come the World Cup. He couldn't stand around. He couldn't go to a club. I'm sure there are bigger clubs that were vying for his signature, but you can't risk not playing. Bruges plays in a two-striker system, and he's playing with club countryman and teammate Tajon Buchanan. It's a perfect way to continue to develop that chemistry as they work together. So I think this is a great move for him. I mean, Bruges sold one of their star strikers in Openda to Lens, where Adam Buxa was actually sold to as well from the Revolution. So you have a nice spot opened up for Kyle Larin to kind of fill, and you really like this move because he's going to be playing week in and week out. He'll be getting those matches that he needs. So come World Cup, he'll be nice and fit.
Expectations for Bruges are to win. And that's the sort of mentality you want to have. And, of course, Larin's going to be a guy who plays a huge role in that. Expectations at Toronto, TBD, they're building. And part of building is that you're changing the pieces. And Mark-Anthony Kaye going back to where he started his career, where he's from. Bob Bradley saying this is what we need in the midfield. Speaking of playing with countrymen, he's going to be part of a midfield with Jonathan Osorio. You figure Michael Bradley in there as well. You have all of these new moves for Toronto in the attacking side of the field. They have a huge upside, but can Mark-Anthony Kaye help them realize that? He's sort of in a numbers game in the midfield, which we'll get into when Dave gives you the starting 11 for Canada. He's going to start a game at the World Cup. I think that's pretty clear given Atiba Hutchinson's age and the expectations and how quick those games come in Qatar and the climate there. He was not thriving, let's say, at the level that he was with LAFC with the Rapids. He needs to get back to that. Bob Bradley is a manager who's known him for a long time, who sort of helped usher him into this higher level. Can Bob help him get to a new level ahead of the World Cup? To me, that's got to be the goal between those two. A manager that knows him, a player that thrives under said manager. It's a match made in heaven. It's back in the six, ahead of a World Cup, ahead of 2026 in the U.S. and Canada. It is a perfect move for Mark-Anthony Kaye this summer, so I'm super happy for him on that side. And then just happy for Vitória. He needed to find a landing spot, likely a starter for this team. Center back, a little bit of a question mark, so I think that one's important. Dave, you're our Canada expert. Did we miss anything here? Any moves that snuck past the radar?
No, I just think when you talk about moves for the Canadian men's national team right now, I think it's the ones that didn't happen that really stand out. We've heard the rumors around Sam Adekugbe, maybe jumping to a bigger club in Turkey, but the big one's Jonathan David. I mean, the rumors were Real Madrid, Arsenal. We were talking about some of the biggest clubs in the world, and while he's won a Ligue 1 title at Lille, it was a Lille in a different state than they are in right now. And the question is, when is the right time to make that move for him? Does this mean he's peaking and at great form getting to the World Cup? Or does this mean things got a little stale for him and maybe you don't see the best of him? So I think a huge surprise for a lot of Canada fans that Jonathan David is still a Lille player. And it'll be interesting to see how this first time ever Winter World Cup going into a January transfer window sort of affects his future.
Busy times.
It is disappointing, I'll tell you that. I know he's a little disappointed. But you just have to keep pushing and staying positive. And what better way to sell yourself to the rest of the world by having a standout World Cup? So you kind of go into that with that motivation. If you feel like your price tag only gets only gets bigger.
Hey, dream big, quarterfinals, right? Go to the quarterfinals, score some big goals. Bing, bang, boom, Real Madrid. That's the way this stuff works, huh? Look, busy summer for Canada, busy summer for the U.S. as well. Here you can see sort of the big moves that have happened since we were last with you in June. Tyler Adams transferred to Leeds. Huge deal there. Headed to a place and a coach that he has some familiarity with, just like Mark Anthony Kaye in a lot of ways. Chris Richards seems to be sealing his move to Crystal Palace. Patrick Vieira wants him there. Big-time move for Chris Richards going from Bayern, of course, on loan at Hoffenheim last season. We've talked a lot about the goalkeeper situation. We know what the deal was for Matt Turner. He's at Arsenal. Can he win minutes? Can he win a spot? TBD on that. But Zach Steffen is going to Middlesbrough in the championship, who have ambitions of jumping right back up. And they're saying he's the starter. They know what it's about. He needs minutes ahead of the World Cup. So he's making his move there from Manchester City. And Luca de Torre to Galicia. He's transferred to Celta in La Liga. A big transfer for him from the Eredivisie. Let's talk through Zach Steffen, Dave. I think this is probably the big one. The goalkeeper outside the number 9 has been a big question mark. What does this mean for Steffen? What does it mean for the U.S.?
It's huge, I think, for the U.S. Zach Steffen is the preferred starting goalkeeper for Greg Berhalter. The battle is training at Man City and playing one-off games enough to keep him above goalkeepers that are playing week in and week out. You can take that question away. He will be the starter for Middlesbrough. They were a team that was just outside of getting to the Premier League last year. They start early, so he's going to get a ton of games in. Obviously, the championship plays 750 games a season, so it's the perfect spot for him to get settled in and get ready and play at a decently high level. Is it going to challenge him? Maybe not, but it's going to be an opportunity to start week in and week out in competitive games and be at his top form when you get to Qatar.
Charlie, he's got to get sharp as far as games go. As Dave said, I mean, jokingly, 750. I mean, it's like, 600.
48 game season.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like
he may have 24 games before the World Cup starts.
Yeah,
and that's what he needs after these years on Man City's bench. Chris Richards needed a place that was invested in him, that wanted him to be the guy. It seems like he's found that with Crystal Palace.
I wouldn't say he's coming in to be the guy.
Well, they've invested in him. How about that? We'll leave it at that.
How
Charlie.
about that?
How about that?
I will say, yes, it's a considerable amount of money to pay for a center back. However, and it's a big however, they have 2 stud center backs, and this is a club that only gave up, 50 goals, 46 goals against last year. That is less than Arsenal, Manchester United, West Ham, and Leicester City. This is not a poorly defended team. They have 2 stud center backs in Mark Gay, who is 22 years old, and he's worth $35 million at the very minimum. And you have Joachim Andersen, who's another Danish international, and he is 26 years old, and he's worth $27 million. So center back is not a big need for them, but they do need depth, and that is what Chris Richards was brought in for. So I know it's great. He's going to the Premier League. He's going to Crystal Palace. He's going to compete. However, there are 2 massive center backs playing ahead of him. So it is one of those moves that you love because he's going to the Premier League and he's going to play for a coach who's definitely going to develop him. Patrick Vieira is one of the best to develop young players, as we've seen with New York City FC and the job he did, as well as with Nice. So I think being in that situation, being in that environment is great for Richards, as well as playing in England. We are playing in England in the World Cup. To be in that system, to be familiar with those players and that speed of play, fantastic. But it's going to be an uphill battle. He has to put in a lot of work, and you just hope that when he does get his chance, he takes it.
I'm really excited to watch Luca de la Torre in La Liga. We don't often see Americans there. I want to see how he copes with that jump in a level, because it's a very real jump, but has a skill set that I think could really help him thrive.
Got to learn Spanish.
I know, man. I saw the intro Spanish, video. Yeah. He just needed to get, you got to get Duolingo fired up here. Just a couple greetings. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Yeah,
Si se puede.
Yeah, so get the basics down. He'll get those. I know he will. Tyler Adams won't have much of a transition, let's say, Doyle, at Leeds, at least with the manager. Maybe with the competition, maybe with the league. But as far as Jesse Marsch, those 2 are going to be right at home.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed kind of fated, right? That Tyler Adams would end up playing for Leeds once Jesse Marsch took over for him. I don't think it was necessarily Tyler Adams' first choice, but I think it is a good landing spot because he's going to be leaned upon. Like, he is going to have to help fill that gap in central midfield for this Leeds United side. And the question I have with him is the same question that we've all had for Tyler Adams for years now, is can he be more comfortable with the ball? He's an elite destroyer. I think he's a world-class destroyer. What he is not, and what Greg Berhalter has actually said he struggled with in qualifying, is a particularly good distributor. And because of that, we saw Berhalter tinker with going to a double pivot during the last camp, including the Nations League games. And he said that was because Tyler fell short in certain areas in terms of his distribution. Now, with the way Jesse Marsch has traditionally played, I don't know if Tyler Adams will be able to work on that much. You know, energy drink soccer does not really ask for rhythm out of the central midfielders. It asks for ball winning in ground coverage and pressing. We already know Tyler Adams does that as well as almost anybody in the world. So it's the other stuff that leaves me a little bit concerned here.
I would just add that if they are playing in a World Cup, no doubt Tyler Adams needs to improve with the ball at his feet, making the game from that position. Distribution, but also being able to dribble out of pressure in some cases, taking a good first touch to avoid pressure, which we've seen Xavi, one of the best midfielders to ever play the game, do on a consistent basis for 90 minutes every single game he played. But what I will say is, in a World Cup, most of the time the U.S. is going to be on the back foot. They're not going to be dominating possession.
Totally disagree. Against Iran, against Wales, you don't think the U.S. is going to have more of the ball?
So when they get through those games, when they play England and then they play Holland,
I think the U.S. is going to have more of the ball.
They're going to have more
England
possession than all those players.
Against England,
I don't think so. So I think with the way they'll be set up, it'll be perfect. It'll play right into the U.S.'s hands.
Folks, we got a segment for the next show. It's already been pre-produced. It's right here. It's right in front of us. It's at our fingertips. Let us know what you think about what's going on with the U.S. And can I just say it's going to be a pleasure this year watching Leeds. We had Full America back in the day. We had that group of players. We didn't have a manager involved. To have it be Jesse and Brendan and Tyler all together in one place in the Premier League, it's going to be an absolute joy. And I know if I'm choosing one game on the weekend to watch, it's going to be Leeds 9 times out of 10. All right. We got more coming up for you. We're going to hit the depth charts for both country, including the U.S. number 9 depth chart. Has it changed at all? We'll see about that. Canada's starting 11. We'll talk with Steven Beitashour about that Iran team and take some fan questions. But first, what Greg said. Well, he had some things to say about Brandon Vazquez recently, and Matt Doyle is going to break down what the FC Cincinnati number 9 could bring to this team.
Over the past 6 months, or even longer now, when we've talked about center forward for the U.S. national team, we've talked about Jesus Ferreira playing as a false 9. And the reason Greg Berhalter likes to play Ferreira as a false 9 is because he could drop into central midfield, create numbers there, but also create lanes for the wingers to attack. It's a way of creating chances for guys like Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah. And obviously, Ferreira's played really well and finished some chances himself, so he's made a strong case for himself. But there's also still a strong case for a true number 9. And we're going to take a look here at how a true number 9 creates chances for wingers and central midfielders by occupying and physically dominating defenders. And this is what Brandon Vazquez has been doing for more than a year now for FC Cincinnati. This is a former U.S. Youth International. He's part of the same group as Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic and Tyler Adams. So he has some familiarity with these guys. Played the U17 World Cup with them about 7 years ago. He's very, very good at doing classic center forward stuff, but he can also stretch the field. That's what we're seeing him do right here against Columbus, able to get on the ball, and then he uses athleticism to create a little bit of separation and play the ball across the 6 for a winger. Wouldn't you like to see Christian Pulisic get on the end of a ball like that? So that's the difference between Vazquez and Ferreira. He creates attacking depth himself, whereas Ferreira is always coming back into the play. Another difference is he can physically dominate center backs. Ferreira doesn't do that. It's fine, but sometimes you want to be able to play the ball up and long and have him win a header and play it back into the path of an onrushing attacker. Vazquez has done that wonderfully for FC Cincinnati since he won the starting job. We saw him do it recently against Columbus. Alan Cruz, blasts the ball over. I would like to see Weston McKennie on the end of a chance like that. It's just a different sort of look. Vazquez has been able to do that at a high level in MLS, and what we've seen over the past year is that Greg Berhalter is not going to hold it against a center forward if they're doing good things in MLS. That's why Jesus Ferreira is there. That's why Ricardo Pepi got his chance as well. And I think he name-checked Brandon Vazquez back in springtime for that same reason. I totally expect that we're going to see him in September, certainly if he keeps scoring and creating chances the way he has. And I think if he does show up for the U.S. national team, what we'll see is a different look. A chance to throw a curveball. Really, I think Vazquez is the fastball and Jesus Ferreira is the curveball. And that, to me, is more valuable than just having a like-for-like sub. And it's going to be on Vazquez to make the most of his opportunity. He's certainly done that over the past year for his club. Now's the chance to do it again for his country.
Pancakes for breakfast ahead of every World Cup game for the U.S. That is, if Brandon Vazquez makes it to Qatar. TBD, the number 9 position, a big question mark for the U.S. And Canada's roster and their 11 is one we'll take a look at as well in this segment. We'll start with the U.S., Doyle, and we'll start with the number 9 position. You didn't exactly give us in that segment where you have Brandon Vazquez and whether things have been shuffled over the course of the summer when it comes to the number 9. So take us through right now your depth chart up top for the U.S.
I think it's still Jesus Ferreira, number 1. We saw in this last camp that's where Greg Berhalter rates him, and he's different from the other number 9s in this competition. So I think that he stays there. Brandon Vazquez continues to play really well. I have him number 2. I think he just answers so many questions for the U.S. national team. And look, the other guys who've had a chance at this, guys like Haji Wright, Jordy Pifak, Daryl Dike, Jossie Zardes, like none of these guys have answered the questions. So I think Greg Berhalter's still looking, and of these other guys, Brandon Vazquez is the one who's playing the best ball and is the one who's been name-checked. So I have him number 2. And then number 3, I still have faith in the kid, Ricardo Pepi, number 3 on the depth chart for the U.S. Obviously, he struggled badly with Augsburg when he arrived in the Bundesliga last year. But I got my fingers crossed he's going to come out, score some goals. And what I like about this list is like there are 3 archetypes here. Ferreira is a false 9. Vazquez is a classic target man, whereas Pepe is more of just like a fox in the box, just a pure goal scorer. So I think that allows for different looks for Greg Berhalter with this 26-man roster. That's where I'm aiming right now.
Charlie, if Greg can take 3 pure number 9s to Qatar, would it be those 3, or would you chop and swap?
I would have to say Jesus Ferreira and Ricardo Pepi are on the plane. I couldn't commit to Vazquez right now. If I had to pull a name out right now, it would be between one of these 3 players and Jordan Pifak, Daryl Dike, or Haji Wright. In my opinion, I don't think Vazquez makes the plane for the World Cup. I think the only way Brandon Vazquez makes the plane for the World Cup is if he continues his scoring tear for the whole entire season and carries that into the playoffs. If he does that, I think he has a chance to get, or I think he does end up on the plane. Otherwise, I don't think he will, because there are just so many players out in Europe who have the possibility of, with a strong campaign, they will jump him automatically.
I don't think they will, though. I don't think that is automatic, because like Greg Berhalter's seen them before. He saw Haji Wright. He said, 100 minutes of game time, like, you are just not cutting it. Jordy Pifak can't press. He cannot press. He cannot do anything in build-up. I think that's why he's not playing. Daryl Dike's got a shot, but he's looked lost when he's played for the U.S. And so I think, given how willing Berhalter has been to kick over every stone when it comes to the number 9, like, here's a stone that has been, it's not been turned yet. And that's Brandon Vazquez. And the other advantage here is that he's an excellent pressing forward. He's a very, very good pressing forward. You have to be to play for Pat Noonan in Cincinnati right now, and he has been that guy. So I just think in terms of checking more boxes, I think he's actually got the advantage over the guys who have been in camp and not performed.
Would love to see him in camp in September. If he's going to go to Qatar, he's got to be there then. Greg Berhalter has some big decisions to make and a group to craft to figure out who it is that has an opportunity at the number 9 position. There are a lot of names in the mix. It continues to be that way. We'll see what these European seasons bring, as well as continued form in Major League Soccer. All right, let's turn to Canada. Dave, we were trying to look for a positional group, and we wanted to, should we do center backs? Okay, we did center backs last month. Should we do central midfield? Okay, it's pretty set in a lot of ways what that central midfield looks like. Okay, up top, it was like, well, it's Larin and it's David, and then you have the guys in behind. So let's just do the whole shebang. Give me your 11 that you think will play against Belgium in the opener for John Herdman. What does that 11 look like?
It's a whole different conversation when you're talking about Canada versus what we were just talking about with the U.S. We're not talking about form or, depth charts. It's about matchups, and it's about what formation will John Herdman go with and what type of defensive cover does he want, what type of attacking verve. So this is the 11 that I put together, as you said, to go out there against Belgium. I think it'll be 5 at the back, first ever World Cup game against De Bruyne, Lukaku. I don't have to name all the attacking players on Belgium. I think we're all already a little bit worried and scared about what we're going to see. Now, it can look a few different ways, and I still think if you do play 5 in the back, there are a couple different options. I've got Tajon Buchanan in this lineup because Charlie Davies shamed me into doing it. I don't actually know that he will play in that role. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Alistair Johnston put there as more of a safe play to be defensively solid, which would allow you to bring Sam Adekugbe in as a left center back, which is what we saw Canada start World Cup qualifying in, and then really unleash Alphonso Davies down that left wing to basically be a free winger, free attacker as that quote-unquote left wing back as the best player in Canadian history. But I think when you look at those front two, they were to the two best in CONCACAF. Kyle Larin was arguably the best goal scorer on the planet. I think both of them are pretty solid, and Atiba Hutchinson's going to get the start. And if he's in there and Eustachio's in there, that's your base, that's your solidity. So I think the pieces around that back could move a little bit, but it's probably going to be this formation. I think it's going to be most of these faces.
So we're saying a midfield 3, Dave, of Osorio, Eustachio, and Atiba Hutchinson. Atiba's the legend. I don't see any scenario in which he's not starting the first game of the World Cup. It's not just the legend status. He's still a hell of a player as well. Eustachio, probably the most technical of all these players. And then Osorio gives you more of the attacking side. Could you see Mark-Anthony Kaye pushing into that group? Is it a choice between Mark-Anthony Kaye and Osorio or Mark-Anthony Kaye and Atiba Hutchinson? Like, how does he fit into this team, if not as a starter?
Listen, Mark-Anthony Kaye, the last time we saw him on the field for Canada, he got a red card down in Costa Rica.
Fair.
Since then, his form dropped at Colorado. He's been traded to TFC. It's early on now, but it feels like Mark-Anthony Kaye has taken steps back since the last time Canada was together, and this is the 3 that I think you'd see anyway. So for him to earn his way back in, a lot has to change over the next few months.
All right, let's say they're down to Belgium. They don't start Tajon. He's an obvious one to bring off the bench. What other tactical switches do you think Herdman could think about later in games?
I think Junior Hoylett's obviously a huge option for them. He's been a veteran. The other option is to move Alphonso Davies. So maybe you play him as the 10. Maybe you move him up top and drop someone else off the team or drop someone deeper. So there are a few different pieces that John Herdman can move. He could go to 4 at the back. Richie Laryea is an option on both wings, and he is a true attacking fullback. That's what he does best. So in terms of trying to get back into games, that's not an issue. And Ike Ugbo as well has been a big piece and has been scoring goals in France. So for this Canadian team, there's a lot of ways John Herdman can move things around in the flow of the game.
All right.
I could also see them going to a 4-5-1 and moving, just playing with one striker and going with Jonathan David up top or Kyle Larin based on form. And then you have added cover for a left winger in Alphonso Davies, but Adekugbe behind him. And then on the right side, you could have Richie Laryea with Tajon Buchanan as the right winger. So there is so much flexibility with this team, and I think that is why I love this Canadian team as well, is because they adjust, and Herdman's not afraid to switch it up and to put people in different positions. So it will be something where we see, I think, in-game management and changes throughout the World Cup.
All right, let us know what you think of Dave's Canadian starting 11 against Belgium. What changes would you make, if any, and what's going on in your mind at home with the number 9 situation for the U.S.? What would be the 3 that you would take to Qatar, if it is just 3? We are going to start now a little series ahead of Qatar, previewing the opponents for the U.S. and Canada. And this week, we are starting with Iran. Steven Beitashour went to the World Cup with Team Melli in 2014, and he can let us know what's going on with the squad. All right, let's keep the show rolling. Club and Country Qatar 2022, and we are super happy to have Steven Beitashour with us of the Colorado Rapids, and not so long ago, Team Melli, Iran. The right back, taken to the World Cup in 2014. Unfortunately, Steven, no games played, but you saw the inside of a World Cup and you saw the inside of the Iranian national team. We're here to get the breakdown from you. We're going to talk to you more as the game comes closer, but welcome. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's always good to see you.
I see some split allegiances behind you right now. Care to explain the double jersey we have going on?
This is the $1 million question I get all the time. Who are you rooting for? Who are you rooting for? So I just put them both up. Look, I got called to a few camps. I never got capped out with the U.S., so therefore, when I did play for Iran, so they're my two teams. I am Iranian American, just to set the record straight. Proud of both. So both are up.
All right, a house divided. We'll find out come later on this year, maybe where the heart lies at the end of 90 minutes, and what will be the finale for the group stage for both teams. A huge match for the U.S. and Iran. And let's start with the current state of Iran. It's been a little dramatic, I feel like. There were the headlines that came out. The coach is gone. He qualified him for the World Cup, Steven, and then he's back. What's going on?
Who knows? Who knows? It's a bit of a mess right now, unfortunately. It started off way back when he got hired. He apparently wasn't the first choice or the second or third or fourth. He was like the fifth or sixth option. And no one wanted to take the job because when they hired Mark Wilmots, he just did terrible. He was only there for a few months, and they were doing terrible on the brink of elimination. So no one really wanted to step into that. And, at the time, if you look at Skocic's his resume, it wasn't great, and so he was at some small clubs for a year here and there, and then he was again their fifth or sixth option, and he took it and saved them, got them to qualify for the World Cup, first team to actually qualify in the Asian qualifiers. So to see what's going on now is a little confusing. Like, look, maybe you didn't want to, but you were on the brink of not qualifying, and he just crushed it. So I kind of feel like they owe it to him, just like, give him a shot. But they're looking for a big name, either foreign or, a big domestic coach with a great resume. So I don't know if he will be there when World Cup comes in a few months, but it's a bit of a mess right now.
The drama, I guess, will continue.
Yeah.
There for now. Little indecision on the part of the Federation. But look, around over the last two World Cups, when you were there 1 point, last World Cup 4 points, there's a build here. There's experience. There's expectations. Tell me what this tournament and this team means to Iran and the country, the soccer culture, and all they're in.
Yeah. Oh, it means everything to them. When I got called in, you could just sense it right when you get to the country. I feel like in the U.S. we have so many other sports, and so maybe soccer's not at the top of the list. But when you go to Iran, it's at the top. Like everybody, whether it's little kids to grandparents and everyone in between. They're so passionate about it, so you can sense that. And so right now it's the biggest time of the year. It's the World Cup. It only happens every 4 years, so everyone's just waiting for this moment, and they want to do well. So I think that's why there's a little bit of pressure. Maybe they're talking about bringing Carlos Queiroz back because he did so well in the last 2 cycles for the World Cup. But yeah, there's pressure. They want to win. They want to advance. I think that's their goal. Advance through the group stage, get to the next round. But we'll see what happens.
Competing goals for the U.S. and Iran, for all 4 teams in the
Yeah.
group, of course. Give me a special memory from 2014 before we break down the nitty-gritty of this current Iran team, Team Melli. What stands out in your mind?
I think the proudest moment was actually getting on that final 23-man roster. I think just seeing my name, only 23 names amongst 80 million people in that country. I think I was the only player not born in Iran that got to play for them, which is pretty cool in itself just because of how many other, not just Iranian Americans, but Iranian Germans, just Iranians all around the world there are. So it's not just the 80 million that live in Iran, but there's so many Iranians in just LA alone. And so it was pretty cool just to see my name on that final roster, and get to represent so many people, represent my parents who were born in Iran. So pretty cool.
Expectations, you sort of named it. They want to get to the knockout round. That's where everybody wants to be. It gives you an opportunity to make the big dreams that we talked about in a previous segment come true. Mm-hmm. How are people thinking about this U.S. matchup and the fact that it is sort of the I mean, it is like a decider. The final game of the group stage. It's all eyes are going to be on that, and fates will be decided in those 90 minutes or 90 minutes plus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the expectations are necessarily to get to the next round. I know the goal is to, and so I think it's a tough group. Look, I could see any two getting out of that group. Honestly, I'm not just saying that. It could be Iran, U.S. It could be Iran, England. It could be U.S., England, Wales. Like, it could be any of them. But every game, every point is going to matter, and so I just it's going to be a very interesting matchup come that last game, and just to see what happens and what's on the line for that last game. Maybe both teams tie and they just shake hands and say, "Okay, let's go. We're both in." But you never know.
November 20. Very diplomatic of them, huh? November 29th, 2022. Of course, it's coming up here. Iran, U.S. after. Wales and England for the U.S. Let's talk style of play, and that's sort of what people are. I mean, I think a lot of people are guessing. Let's be honest. Most of the folks did not watch Asian qualifying, did not watch Iran. Tell me the style of play. Tell me what got Iran to Qatar.
Yeah, I don't blame him either. It's tough to watch those games. Just the availability isn't really there. So, style of play is they're very defensive, organized. They will counter, and they're very good on set pieces. So, expect that not just when they play the U.S., but when they play Wales and England as well. You go back to the 2014 World Cup when I was there in Brazil. Our second match against Argentina, I kid you not, our forward was on top of our box marking Lionel Messi when he scored that goal in the 91st minute. I'm not kidding. So, when I say we're going to be in a low block, very defensive, there's going to be moments in the game you're going to see that, and it might frustrate the U.S., it might frustrate the fans, but they've been successful with it, so I expect that.
There's strength and stability. Where are the strengths? Where are places that the U.S. could maybe be hurt, should be worried?
That they can be hurt, I think if they overexpose themselves, maybe on the counter, maybe if they get a decent amount of possession, different spells, then they can be vulnerable, and there will be room to operate for the U.S. But if they don't have too many opportunities to expose themselves, to possess and get open, it's going to be tough to break them down.
Let's talk players then. Who is the star player? Who's the man on Iran? Team Melli.
There's a few guys. Sardar Azmoun is definitely one of my favorite players. He's at Leverkusen right now. He's had an incredible career. Mehdi Taremi is another really good player who's with Porto in Portugal. He's had an incredible career as well. I never played with him, so I don't know him as a person, but those are two good ones, big clubs. Ali Reza Jahanbash is another great player, great person off the field. So I think those three guys are probably my top three picks as far as people to watch that could make a difference for Iran.
Let's dig into Azmoun. 17 goals, then 19 goals back-to-back years in Russia, was in it. Made the move to Bayer Leverkusen, did not get as many minutes as he may have wanted in the last season, but clearly a danger man. Like, we're talking, in Russia, this is just 4 seasons, 9 goals in 12 games, 17 and 28, 19 and 24, 7 and 15, then gets moved on. I mean, he can hurt the U.S., no doubt about it.
Yeah.
What's his? Give me sort of his profile as a player.
Yeah, and he had some good Champions League success as well for some big teams. And in 2014, I remember there were some Liverpool links with him. So he's been under the telescope for a little while. He's got some people watching. So I think now the rest of the world hopefully can see what he can do. But his style of play, he's a big kid. He's very good in the air, but he's also quick. He can turn you. He'll run in behind. So he's very difficult to mark. It's not one thing or the other you can do. And I just think he has a good attitude as well to work hard and always compete, which makes him special. I sensed that in 2014 when he was a lot younger, and I knew he was going to be good. And thankfully he's doing well. Obviously, his move to Leverkusen hasn't worked out as well as he'd like, but, that happens, whether he figures it out or if he goes to another club and does well, but he's a good player.
3rd overall goal scorer all time for Team Melli. All right, man. I think we got a good primer here.
Yeah.
We'll be waiting for November 29th. We'll see you on the live stream, and we'll chat another couple times before then to get a little bit more deep into what's going on with Iran ahead of the World Cup. But Steven Beitashour, we appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for having a split heart.
Yes.
And we look forward to chatting very soon.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Always good seeing you.
All right, big thanks to Steven for joining us. He will be on with us during the U.S.-Iran game to finish out the group stage for both those teams. Let's finish with some fan questions. As always, we'll take any. So in the comments section, if you have a question for next month's show, get at us. You can tweet at us as well. Our handles here are at the bottom of the screen. Let's start with Martin. Dave, where should Joel Waterman be on the Herdman right center back depth chart? I did not hear his name talking about a starting 11. Where does he fall?
He's probably fighting for that 5th spot right now at the center back depth chart, which means he's probably out, even if they play with the back 3. I mentioned Adekube can be a left-sided center back, which can move Kamal Miller over. Alistair Johnson can play there as well. So right now, Scott Kennedy is the next guy out, and Joel Waterman's chasing him. He's going to play in the 2 Bundesliga this year. He's been good when he's been on the field for Canada, although it's been very rare. So it feels like with how solidified this group is, that Waterman's on the outside looking in, but Daniil Henry has been in the group, and he right now is not a part of any team. He is unattached, which probably moves Joel Waterman up the pecking order.
All right, Sean Hargrove to finish us off here. Guys, can you talk to the strongest and weakest positions for the U.S., and we'll focus on the U.S. with this one, and ones that maybe impact their play, the tactics, group stage matchups. Look, the weakest position I think is pretty clear. We've talked about it over and over. It's the number 9 position. Jesus Ferreras had a run of form recently, but you would still say that's the weakest position on the field. So I want to throw it to Doyle and Charlie here. Quickly, what's the strongest position group in your opinion?
I think we both agree it's a midfield, right, Charlie?
Easily. Musa, McKinney, Adams, MMA, that is. And you have Luca Della Torre, you have Brendan Aronson, you have Gio Reyna, you have Kellen Acosta. You have a number of strong players who can play in the midfield. That is, without a doubt, the strongest part of this group.
All right, let us know. What do you want to hear about in August? Who do you want to hear from? We will take any and all feedback from you. Thanks for tuning in to Club and Country Qatar 2022. A lot more content to come here on the MLS YouTube page and at MLSsoccer.com. With that, just 4 months to go. Let the countdown begin, everybody. We'll see you next time.